All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I want to also thank Cesar for inviting me here. Kind of a last minute thing, but I was available and it sounded fun. So here we are. This is called Like the Rest of Us. Sometimes when I get mad, when people stop being beautiful, even if it's mostly not their fault, you can only go on for so long, I know, no matter how tough you think you are. What with time and death and the general sorrow and madness of a life chewing at you night and day. Some folks have a good run, sure, but still I'm sad when they eventually falter and fail and become like the rest of us. I want the aging rock star to bust out with one more brilliant record. I want the old novelist to find his way through one more book that burns and wails and tells the terrible truth of things. I want the poet on his deathbed to scrawl one last line that will save me in the way I can't save myself. This is called The Way of Things. I believe it's the most recent poem I have completed. All the old North Beach bohemians are dying. It's like death woke up from a little nap and decided it was time to remind everybody who's boss. It started with Lawrence last February and then lovely Jack 6 months later to the day. In the last handful of weeks, both Rosemary and Cuba Tony have passed on, along with a couple other Grant Avenue faces I never got around to putting names to. And the empty stools on the tables at the cafes and bars, they start to add up. Now it's just silence or dumb shit banter where there used to be fiery talk of art and politics and the plight of the individual. And something within me imagines it's my duty now to step up and embrace my walk-on part in the war and fill the void as best I can. Claim a proper seat at Vesuvio or Specs and waste as many hours there as I can manage, with my jacket collar turned up just so, the faintest glint in my bleary eyes suggesting that the muse and me were on good terms, that death and I have worked out some kind of truce, and when you buy me a beer, I'll talk your ear off like I've been some places and know a little something about the way of things. This is called Drinking Beer and Trying to Outrun Them Old Cosmic Blues Again. I'm out here on Hate Street in the unseemly year of 2021, along with the ghosts of the diggers and the drug-addled kids spare changing on the sidewalks outside of smoke shops. All of us 50 years too late for the summer of love. And I'm outside of Murio's trophy room drinking beer and trying to outrun them old cosmic blues again. But Janice can tell you that it just isn't done. And at the edge of the panhandle, there's a girl with the best tits I've ever seen. She's dancing topless on the grass, out of her mind on something. Her belongings scattered in little piles at her feet, just like it were June in 1967. But the flower children are long gone, and the 21st century and the dead-eyed junkies close in about her with no music in their hearts, oblivious to peace and love and the rest of that hippie bullshit. Thank you. This is called Centuries More Alive. In some dirty old bookstore in downtown San Francisco, I found a copy of Hustler magazine from 1976. It featured an interview with Charles Bukowski. He was in his mid-50s and just reaching the height of his fame. In the photograph, he's got a bit of a snarl on his face and a smoldering in his eyes. He comes off as somewhat nasty and full of himself, but reading the interview felt like a brush with livelier times. He said some things that would have buried him now, things that would never have made it to print. For the better, you might say, and fair enough. But there is an energy there, some moxie, a kind of ragged joy that feels largely absent from the present times. And I'm a bit wistful about it all. I miss the 20th century. I miss porno magazines and Charles Bukowski. The day at hand feels beleaguered and half alive, just wanting to lie down somewhere and be done with it all. The poet is long dead, and the young girls and the glossy photographs are old. The body's now just something to hide. And I open a beer just like Bukowski would. I turn on the stereo and disappear into music from centuries more alive than this one. This is called Bored with Rimbaud. The plague has settled in like a dumb gray fog, and we're all just waiting around for someone to open up the world again. I'm bored with Rimbaud, I'm bored with drink and bored with no drink. Outside, there's a sliver of a moon, and people more useless even than myself are shuffling through the dark towards destinations both sinister and banal. The things that used to save me have faded, and even the music seems emptied of magic. My incantations won't resurrect my love. The bones just rattle and creak and go quiet again. The doctors and the politicians say the cure is on the way, but who knows what will be left of us? The silence of the night breathes like something alive. And I toss aside Rimbaud and go back to Baudelaire. This is called If Your Loneliness Were a Flag, You Could Wave It. If your loneliness were a flag, you could wave it high above your conquered lands. If it were a car, you could paint it metallic blue and drive it over the cliffs of hell into a fiery sea. If it were a ship, you could fly it into the heart of the sun. If your loneliness were God, you could curse it or petition for mercy. If it were a stranger, you could turn it away at the door. If it were a heart, you could stop it. If your loneliness were love, you could steel yourself to it, toss its letters unopened into the garbage. If it were a law, you could break it or strike it down. If it were a house, you could set it aflame and watch it glow from distant hills. If your loneliness were your mother, you could pack your things and run away, make it suffer for all those years of pain. If it were a ghost, you could banish it back to the nether realms with a spell or a charm. But your loneliness is a song, and you have an ugly voice. The neighbors complain every time you try and sing. This is called Jonel's. It's about a bar in the Tenderloin at the corner of Jones and Ellis, hence the name Jonel's. Kind of clever. They were filming a movie or a TV show or something at Vesuvio, so they wouldn't let us in. And the hipster art show ran out of wine just as we arrived. So we ended up at Jonel's in the Tenderloin at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, like something from a William Volman novel. My poet friend had just won $9,000 from a slot machine in Mendocino. He was part of some kind of gang that worked the casino circuits. Whatever they did, I don't think it was completely legal. I didn't understand how it worked, but he sometimes made money at it. Then he'd take a week or so off just to fuck around until the money was gone. Then he had to figure out something else to do. Bonnie, the bartender, put our drinks in front of us, and my poet friend said, "Bonnie, me and Bill here are the two greatest writers in the whole fucking city, and nobody gives a shit." And Bonnie just laughed and told my poet friend he shouldn't always drink so much. And he said, "Bonnie, I started drinking at 3 o'clock today, and I'm feeling pretty vulnerable. This would be the perfect opportunity for you to take advantage of me." And Bonnie laughed and changed the channel on the television. And then my poet friend was cursing and looking at his phone. He was flipping it off before returning it to his pocket. My girlfriend, he said, we're in an open relationship, but she hasn't returned my messages in 3 days. I left flowers on her fucking doorstep and everything. Man, I need some blow. Bonnie, who's got some blow? Bonnie punched something into her phone, and 2 minutes later, a large bald woman with face tattoos was sitting on the other side of my poet friend. They exchange some things, and my poet friend tells me to watch his beer, and he disappears into the bathroom for a good 15 minutes. And when he comes out, he sits back down and gulps down the rest of his beer. He slams the glass down on the bar and yells, "I'll fuck anything that moves!" But nothing moves. So he orders a whiskey, neat, and another beer, and he turns to me and he says, "Listen, motherfucker, I know you're going to make a poem out of this, so just make sure you mention that thing about my girlfriend, because that shit's fucked." This is called Sunday at the Harrah, another bar poem. I tend to do my writing just sitting in a bar or cafe and writing about what's going on around me, so I do tend to have a lot of bar poems. Sunday at the Harrah. I'm weary of poetry and strivings for grace, dreams of redemption and salvation. I've gone as far into the dark as my heart would allow. I wandered there a while and have emerged somewhat cleansed. I'll take whatever days are left to me, asking no favors from nebulous gods. I will offer kindness when I can and accept it, should it be offered in return. I will drink this wine and watch this Japanese woman playing billiards for as long as it lasts, in awe of her laughter and how when she leans to make a shot, her perfect belly hangs just a bit below her belt. She hits the 8-ball into the side pocket just like she said she would. And that's as good as anything that was ever promised. This is called Empty is the New Black. The day crumbles and fails, and we're half-assed Christ nailed to the cross of whatever's left of things. We drink beer in the tenderloin, we grimace beneath the sun. The great American loneliness drips from the walls of the sad hotels where the poets fuck and die. And the latest thing we thought would save us, we burnt through it in a day. There's a guy with a boombox strapped to his bicycle playing music from another world where you could still imagine something other than this dreariness at hand. There's a man on a corner leaning on the liquor store. He's got enough losing tickets scattered at his feet. He could build some kind of kite or boat and get the hell away from here. This is called The People in the Books I'm Reading. I'm at the computer with my wine, and there's a man outside my building calling the name of someone he'll never see again. As the drunk poets send me messages telling me how they're sad about their latest poems not getting enough likes and shares, and how they're sad about their unrecognized genius and their unreviewed books. One tells me of an old lover's suicide as she spills wine across faded letters. Another hasn't slept for days. She says she's enslaved by the phases of the moon. Eddie's muse has skipped town and Jenny's scared about 30 days in rehab. Anna stopped drinking and found God. She tells me this time for good. Frank's checking himself into the psych ward and they took his dog away. Angry Face is mad because I haven't read his manuscripts. And the people in the books I'm reading are all setting things on fire and committing suicide. And it's a bad night all around, and I can't do much for any of it. I'm sad too. I have my own dead lovers and unreviewed books, and now they're putting the guy outside into the back of a car as I gaze into the flashing lights and pour one more wine. And when I sit down to answer one of the sad messages, I tell my poet friend not to worry too much. They'll cancel us all eventually. This is called The Dead. These days, the dead come around more and more with their warnings and advices, their trails of crumbs. They make me nervous with their bravery, the terrible immensity of their freedom. More and more of the dead used to be my friends back when they were living. Now they know my secrets and all the things I never said. I don't sleep sometimes imagining their conversations in the gossip parlors of the void. It's Saturday night and the dead are here like they've nothing better to do. They're talking shit and singing songs. I'm trying to write it down and the dead keep telling me that is not what they meant at all. That is not it at all. And everybody always talks about the silence, but it's 3 a.m. and I'm nearly out of wine and the dead just won't shut up. This is called The Busted Neon Loneliness. I drink overpriced Chardonnay and a tenderloin joint that's all empty flash and hipster art strewn across steampunk walls. I've run out of poems and pretty things to say. I've got nothing left with which to poster paint the void. No defense against the day other than to get drunk and walk the downtown streets with the suicides and the pretty girls as ash from distant fires drifts down like snow, blanketing the busted neon loneliness of massage parlors and lotto machines. There's a man on a stretcher on Post Street gasping for air with his dirty belly hanging out. And in Chinatown, old men sit on crates smoking outside the butcher shops, staring through the muddy years. I breathe it all in like some sick perfume. The beautiful terror of it is the answer to everything, and it makes me ashamed for every time I ever asked for anything, every time I ever thought to taint the hours with dreams of purpose. And I just want to dissolve into the laughter of the televisions and the corner bars, and the smoke from the cigarettes held just so, and the skinny fingers of the girls huddled outside the gentlemen's clubs, and just drift along with the ghosts of the forgotten poets and the crazies and the long dead bartenders, embracing the terrible music of it, becoming a golden bright nothing caught in the amber of the day, like an empty god drunk on the fire of everything. And I'd just like to end real quick on a poem by someone other than myself, an inspiration to me. That would be David Lerner. I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with him. He was part of the Cafe Babar scene here in San Francisco in the late 80s, early 90s. Zeitgeist Press just released a brand new collection of his unreleased poems called Bouquet of Nails. I'm sure you can find it on Amazon or the Zeitgeist site, so look for that. So I'm going to close with a poem by David Lerner called 5 Dildos, Not 6. A friend of mine recently informed me that in Arizona, it's against the law to own more than 5 dildos. 5 is okay, 6 are illegal. With 5, you can walk down the street waving them around like flags, but 6 gets you busted. Can you imagine appearing in court charged with the possession of more than 5 dildos? Can you imagine doing time for the possession of more than 5 dildos? I'd rather be a child molester in jail. You'd make more friends. Strolling through downtown Berkeley the other day, I noticed a sign that said drug-free zone. Put up a sign and it happens. Form a committee to study the problem. Settle on something that looks good in the press and let her rip. Take pictures of the mayor standing beside the drug-free zone sign while he explains to reporters how much he cares about junkies. I understand the neighborhood kids keep defacing the signs by scratching out free so they read drug zone. The city comes over and takes down the signs and puts new ones up. And the kids then deface that. The city then yanks them and the kids come back and you get the picture. I wonder how much money those fucking signs cost. Between the well-paid committees and the mayor's time and the poor bastards who have to unscrew the goddamn things and cart them away. Money that could go for hospital beds where people could kick, and recovery houses where they could get straight, or M16s and telephone taps and payoffs for rats. Anything's cooler than a stupid fucking sign. The country's completely insane. Public relations, what truth used to be. A good Q rating is what fame once was. A balance of power where hatred once sang. And cretinous scum on their leather thrones making laws that are lies for people so numb with defeat they can't even howl. Well, I'll howl when I want to and scream when I please. I'll rip off my clothes and race naked down Broadway with one dildo up my ass, one in each hand, two up my nose and one in my mouth. And I'll flip out when I have to and come back if I can. If I don't make it, some other crazed loser can kick my dead ass all over the street, steal my 6 dildos, and run. Thank you.
Woo! Unmute and let them know. Let them know. Come on, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Bye, y'all.
Wow.
Very good, Billy.
Dildo heaven. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, there were so many quotes that you dropped in there. I loved them. One of my favorites was that an empty drunk god on the an empty god drunk on the fire of everything. Oh my goodness, really truly great. Thank you,
God, that was
thank you.
great.
So much. Thanks again for having me. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're
Thank
welcome.
you.
Thank you.